Good morning, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order. As the previous vice chair of the Sunset Subcommittee, I would like to welcome all members this morning to the subcommittee. Mr. Malgarejo, please call the roll.
Senator Elaine?
Here.
Senator Picker?
Here.
Assemblywoman Howdigi?
Here.
Assemblywoman Kasama?
I'm here.
Assemblywoman Marzola?
Here.
And Senator Spearman.
Thank you, Mr. Malgarejo. Please mark those members who are here present, and please mark those members here as they arrive. Thank you. Welcome to our audience joining us remotely. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to go over some housekeeping items. Please be sure to mute your microphone when you are not speaking to minimize background noise. For the individuals on Zoom, the chat feature is only to be used for technical assistance with BPS. It is not to be used for any communication between members or by presenters unless requesting technical assistance from BPS. Members, please remember to keep your video turned on during the meeting to ensure we have a quorum, but please remember to be sure to mute yourself when you are not speaking, again, to minimize background noise. Witnesses who wish to provide the subcommittee with additional information or have their complete testimony or handouts included in the permanent record may do so by providing an electronic copy to the secretary. You can find his contact information on the subcommittee's website. When testifying, please remember to turn on your microphone and clearly state your name and entity that you represent at the beginning of your testimony. Meeting materials provided to the subcommittee members for this meeting can be accessed on the subcommittee's webpage. Anyone who would like to receive electronic notification of and access to the subcommittee's agendas, minutes, and final report can do so by going to the Nevada Legislature's website and following the links provided. With that, let us get started with our first meeting. Our first item on the agenda is public comment. As noted on the agenda, public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. My plans are to take 30 minutes at the beginning of this meeting, up to 30 minutes, and then we will continue with the remainder of public comment at the second portion at the end of the meeting. Today's virtual meeting format is important to keep everyone safe, and I want the public to know that public comment may be made in 4 different ways, all of which are listed on today's agenda. The first format is by calling 1-669-900-6833, then entering the meeting ID 856-3810-2486 and pressing the pound key. You can also email your comments to sunset@lcb.state.nv.us. You may also mail your written comments to the Research Division at 401 South Carson Street, Carson City, Nevada, 89701. And last, by faxing your comments into 775-684-6400. LCB's Broadcast and Production Services staff will interact with those making public comment and providing testimony on the phone by facilitating participation during the meeting. BPS, with that, please add the first caller with public comment to the meeting.
Good morning, Vice Chair. There are no callers for public comment at this time.
Thank you so much, BPS. Okay, subcommittee, this actually moves us on to our next agenda item 3, which is the election of the chair and vice chair. I would like to direct the subcommittee to NRS 232B.210. This statute describes the composition of the subcommittee and provides that the chair and vice chair are to be selected from among the voting members of the subcommittee. Pursuant to the statute, the chair is to be elected from one house of the legislature and the vice chair from the other house of the legislature. At this point, I will accept a nomination for chair of the subcommittee.
I would like to nominate Assemblywoman Sandra Howdigi as chair.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Marzola. Are there any other nominations or a second to the motion that Assemblywoman Marzola made?
This is Senator Lang. I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you, Senator Lang. Any other nominations or motions? Seeing no other nominations and hearing a second from Senator Lang, I will close the nomination process. Is there any discussion before the vote? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Melgarejo, would you please take a roll call vote?
Thank you. Senator Elaine,
Yes.
Senator Pickard,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Howdigy,
Yes?
Assemblywoman Kasama,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Marzola,
Yes.
Senator Spearman. I don't believe she's on yet.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Melgarejo. Motion carries. I'm happy to be elected chair. Thank you, colleagues. Okay, at this point, I would like to make a motion to nominate Senator Spearman as a vice chair. Are there any other nominations or a second to this motion?
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Marzola. Any other nominations? Seeing no other nominations and hearing a second from Assemblywoman Marzola, I will close the nomination process. Any discussion on the motion before we take the vote? Seeing no discussion, Mr. Melgarejo, would you please take a roll call vote?
Chair, Senator Lang,
Yes.
Senator Pickard,
Yes.
Senator Spearman still not on. Assemblywoman Kasama,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Marzola,
Yes.
and Chair Howdigy.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Melgarejo. The motion carries. We will inform Senator Spearman when she joins us that without her knowing she's been elected our vice chair. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. As your chair, I would like to welcome you to the first meeting of the Sunset Subcommittee of the Legislative Commission. Now that we are done with that agenda item, let's go ahead and move on to agenda item number 4. At this time, I would like to take a few minutes to allow the members to introduce themselves. Please include the district that you represent, as well as your goals for the subcommittee during the 2021-2022 interim. Let us begin with, normally I would begin with our vice chair, but we can allow our vice chair to introduce herself when she joins us. So I am going to move over and jump to Senator Lang.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Howdigy. I'm Senator Lang. I represent Senate District 7 in Las Vegas. I'm happy to join this committee. My goals for this committee is to just listen and learn and make good decisions to help the people of Nevada as we move forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Senator Lang. Looking forward to working with you on this committee. Senator Pickard.
Hey, Madam Chair, I am Keith Pickard. I represent Senate District 20 in Henderson. And we are, this is the third subcommittee I've been on, or the third time I've been on this subcommittee, I should say. We've done some pretty good work in the past. We've been able to look at the various regulatory agencies and make sure that the boards are managing things the way the statutes require. There have been a few hiccups along the way, and so my goal at this point is to try to fix and iron out those last of the issues and then make sure we're all on an even keel. So look forward to working with you, Chair Howdigy.
Thank you, Senator Pickard. I look forward to working with you again on this committee. Let's move over to Assemblywoman Marzola.
Good morning. I'm Elaine Marzola, representing Assembly District 21. This is my first time serving on this committee. I'm really excited. I want to be able to just listen, learn, take in everything that everyone else that has been serving in this committee has learned. And just again, like Senator Lane stated, just make decisions that are best for the state of Nevada. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Marzola. I'm sorry, Assemblywoman Marzola. Assemblywoman Kasama.
Good morning, everyone. I look forward to serving on the committee. Good to see my office neighbor, Assemblywoman Marzola, again. And yes, I'm here. This is my first, obviously my first interim session. So looking to learn from everybody, I like the idea that we have this subcommittee that reviews committees, perhaps, to sunset those that are no longer needed. I think that just streamline the government, and so excited to learn and understand this and work with everybody.
Thank you.
And Assembly District 2, can't remember if I said that, in the west side of the Las Vegas Valley, the Summerlin area.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Kusama. Well, and thank you to committee members for taking the time to introduce yourself. For those tuning in, I'm Assemblywoman Sandra Howdigi. I represent Nevada's 41st Assembly District, and I had the privilege of vice chairing the interim joint subcommittee during the last interim, and it is my privilege to chair the Sunset Subcommittee during this 2021-2022 interim. My goal for this committee during this interim is to use this time to review the boards and commissions that don't normally get attention, those that have not met in the last 3 to 4 years, and those that have never been reviewed by our committee before. With the newly formed interim committees that reflect the standing committees, it is my hope that Interim Commerce and Labor can focus on the occupational licensing boards so that we can focus on the others. Committee members, I intend to have this committee conduct itself in a fair and respectful manner. A fair and respectful manner to each other, to presenters, and to stakeholders from all sides. Even if a member of this committee disagrees with something said or a viewpoint given, we will always treat each other with the dignity and respect each of us deserves. I look forward to working with you all during this interim. I would also like to take this moment to introduce our LCB staff. We have already heard from our policy analyst for this subcommittee, Mr. Cesar Malgarejo. We have Eileen O'Grady and Jessica Dummer, who will be serving as our legal counsel. And Stephen Jameson is our subcommittee secretary. Thank you to all of our LCB staff for all that you do and will do to support this subcommittee throughout the interim. We definitely can run this subcommittee without your assistance. At this time, I would also like to thank our BPS staff who makes these virtual meetings possible. So thank you to all of our members from LCB who are joining us and helping us get through this meeting today. Okay, members, the next item on our agenda is agenda item number 5, an overview of the membership, statutory duties, and status of recent recommendations of the Sunset Subcommittee of the Legislative Commission. For agenda item number 5, we have our policy analyst, Mr. Malgarejo, here to provide an overview. Mr. Malgarejo, when you are ready, please begin.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, my name is Cesar Malgarejo. I'm the Senior Policy Analyst of the Legislative Council Bureau's Research Division, and I will be serving as the Committee Policy Analyst for the Sunset Subcommittee. The LCB is a nonpartisan permanent staff of the Legislature, and as nonpartisan staff of the LCB, I can neither advocate nor oppose for any of the proposals that come before you. My role is to assist the subcommittee as a whole, and each of you as individual legislators, while also providing policy and research needs to help you make informed decisions about the issues reviewed and studied by the subcommittee. As most of you will know, the creation of the Sunset Subcommittee came out of a recommendation of the 2008 Nevada Spending and Government Efficiency Commission. This commission recommended for the creation of a Sunset Commission to review government operations for the purpose of improving efficiency. The Sunset Subcommittee was formally established in 2011 with the passage of Senate Bill 251 with bipartisan support. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures, there's roughly 37 states that have established some form of sunset review. Each interim, committee staff prepares a final report summarizing the meetings and actions of the subcommittee, which is available online. Please let me know if you would like a hard copy or a hyperlink to any of the reports from the previous interims. I have uploaded 3 documents under this agenda item. One is the Sunset Subcommittee of the Legislative Commission brief. The next is Sunset Subcommittee membership history. And finally is Sunset Subcommittee final status of recommendations. I'll just walk through these items roughly. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me at any time. The composition of the Sunset Subcommittee is made up of 6 legislative members, which are appointed by legislative leadership. 3 additional non-voting members are nominated by the governor and appointed by the chair of the Legislative Commission. At this time, we do not have the 3 non-voting members. but we hope to receive those nominations as soon as possible and welcome them in future meetings. Duties of the Sunset Subcommittee. The Sunset Subcommittee is codified in NRS 232B, which regulates legislative review of public agencies, and the subcommittee is responsible for a review of all boards and commissions in Nevada created by the legislature, which there are approximately 232. And the subcommittee is responsible for recommending to the Legislative Commission whether each should be continued, modified, consolidated with another entity, or terminated. Only boards and commissions established by the Nevada Constitution, such as the Regents or Board of Examiners, and those established by executive order are outside the purview of the Sunset Subcommittee. The Sunset Subcommittee is also required to conduct a review of each professional and occupational licensing board and regulatory body in this state to determine whether the restrictions on the criminal history of an applicant for an occupational professional license are appropriate. In the 5 interims, this Sunset has reviewed an average of nearly 27 boards and commissions each interim. Yet statute only requires the Sunset to review a minimum of 10 each interim. During the 2019-2020 interim, the subcommittee reviewed the lowest number of boards and commissions since its inception, with only reviewing 15 boards and commissions, largely because of the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Additionally, because the subcommittee selected occupational and professional licensing boards to review, the review process for these types of boards and commissions is a little more in-depth, and you will see this when the subcommittee considers their review forms later during today's meeting. In addition to reviewing 15 boards during the 2019-2020 interim, numerous follow-up reports from 20 entities regarding issues or concerns discussed during the preceding interim were also received at each meeting. Of the nearly 126 boards and commissions that have been reviewed, several have been reviewed twice, primarily the occupational and professional licensing boards. 20 boards and commissions and similar entities have been repealed at the recommendation of the Sunset Committee. However, to put this in perspective, the 2019 legislature created 23 new boards and commissions, and the 2021 legislature created 7 new entities. On the document showing the status of recommendations, you will see a broader review of the legislation recommended by this subcommittee and its passage of legislation. Most of the recommendations recommended by this subcommittee for legislation did pass in maybe not in its original bill, but in the final bill passed by the legislature. The one bill that did not pass was BDR 54-515, which required the Nevada Board of Homeopathic Medical Examiners to report to the legislature on or before the first day of the 2021 session. This is a continuation bill from the 2019 session. However, during the 2019-2020 interim, no members were appointed to the homeopathic board, and so a lot of the requests that came from the subcommittee had not been implemented, and thus the bill was not reviewed during the 2021 session. So it is important to understand the Sunset Subcommittee does not have a specified allotment of bill draft requests, as most interim committees or studies have. Instead, subsection 3 of Nevada Revised Statutes 232B.250 requires the Sunset Subcommittee to submit such recommendations on or before June 30th of even-numbered years to the Legislative Commission. The Legislative Commission may then request a bill draft on behalf of the Sunset Subcommittee. Now, you might notice over the past 5 interims that some bills related to the work of the subcommittee were requested by individual members of the subcommittee as personal BDRs. This has been an option exercised by some of the members to bring certain recommendations to the next legislature. I want to mention how important the work of the Legislative Auditor and Division of Internal Audits in the Governor's Finance Office is to the work of the Sunset Subcommittee. Further on this agenda, you will hear from the Legislative Audit Division from the Legislative Counsel Bureau on the work that they provide for this subcommittee. One last thing I should mention is that there is no budgeted number of meetings specific to the Sunset Subcommittee. As noted, the subcommittee is required to complete its work by June 30th for each numbered years. So this is a brief overview of the subcommittee since its creation. Sunset is about halfway through its review of the statutory boards and commissions. Some of these boards were created in the late 1800s. They may not have been reviewed by the legislature in a long time. Subcommittee provides an opportunity for the legislature to look into their operations. It also offers the boards and commissions an opportunity to come before a legislative committee and make requests for revisions to statutes that might make their operations more efficient. Finally, I should point out the NRS provides that it is the burden of the boards and commissions to prove that there is a public need for its continued existence. And Madam Chair, at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Malgarejo. I will now turn to the committee to see if you have any questions for our policy analyst regarding his brief. Okay, Senator Pickard.
Hey, Madam Chair, just a quick question on the homeopathic medical examiners issue. Did I understand correctly that SB 388 did not get heard because the appointments to the board under the changes under SB 98 were not in place, and so we couldn't move forward? Is that correct?
Madam Chair, through you to Senator Pickard. Senator Pickard, that's correct. There was no appointments made before the 2021 legislative session. So there was they weren't able to implement any of the provisions that were recommended in the 2019 legislation.
All right.
I will note there have been appointments made, but there's about half of the vacancies have been filled, but as of now, we have not heard whether the homeopathic board has met.
Okay, and who was responsible to make those appointments? Were those legislative appointments?
Senator Pickard, no, just similar to the other occupational licensing boards, those appointments are made by the governor's office.
Okay, and have we made any comment or contact as a board to the governor's office requesting those appointments that you're aware of?
So, Senator Pickard, Cesar Margaret for the record. So the Sunset Subcommittee did, I believe, send a letter to the governor's office at the end of last interim. And we've been in contact with their staff the last couple of months before today's meeting. And but like I said, half of the vacancies have been filled, but there is still a couple that just have not been filled.
All right. And the only reason I asked is because this was a pretty important thing for us. We wanted to make sure that the homeopathic or the members that are licensed under that board get the support that they need. So I'd just like to make sure that stays on our radar if I can, Madam Chair, to make sure that we follow through because there are a number of people there, I forget how many there, I think it was 688 licensed practitioners. And so there are probably a couple thousand patients that need to make sure we have an operating board that's actually overseeing that practice. So just think it's important to make sure we keep the pressure on. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And again, we'll have the opportunity under agenda item 10 to discuss the boards that we'd like to see come before the Sunset Subcommittee.
Sure.
And that could always be a possibility as well. Thank you, Senator Pickard. Members, any other questions for Mr. Malgarejo? Okay, and Mr. Malgarejo, I do have one only because I didn't write down fast enough, but you did mention the total number of boards that we have sunsetted. Could you repeat that number for me?
Yes, Madam Chair, for the record, Cesar Margaret, Committee Policy Analyst. Let me just pull up my notes. So there's 20 boards and commissions and similar entities that have been repealed at the recommendation of the Sunset Subcommittee.
And Mr. Malgarejo, how many were added? You went through those numbers too.
Yes. Madam Chair, for the 2019 legislature, they created 23 new boards and commissions. And during the 2021 legislature, there were 7 new entities that were created.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Malgarejo. I appreciate that. Members, last call, any questions? Okay,
This is Assemblywoman Kasama. Can I ask a question just for context or personal knowledge regarding the homeopathic board? Was that under the medical boards, and then the need was to have this separate homeopathic board? I'm just a little confused, because if it's not being active and funded, I guess, was there a need for it, or there is still a need? What was the context, how this came about? Just curious for historical knowledge.
Mr. Malgarejo, is that something you can answer? Do you have the, I guess, the historical knowledge of how that board came to creation?
Madam Chair, Cesar Malgarejo for the record. So I don't have the full details with me at the moment, but I can provide all of the members of subcommittee a review of the work of subcommittee during, I believe now it would be 2 past interims. There were some issues with the homeopathic board, I believe with budgeting issues, and there was other concerns that the legislatures had about the operations of the board. And in the 2017-2018 interim, the Sunset Subcommittee had moved for sunsetting this homeopathic board. But the 2019 legislation set specific criteria for the homeopathic board to follow, and then one of those criteria in the bill was actually to remove all of its members and reappoint all new members. And that's kind of where so all the members were removed from the homeopathic board, but there was no new members reappointed. And then that's where everything kind of halted. But again, I will provide the members of this subcommittee a more historical context of why there's been some concerns by the legislature. And we'll continue to reach out to the homeopathic board to see maybe they could present at a future meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Malgarejo.
Chair, may I have a follow-up question?
Yes, absolutely, Assemblywoman.
Yeah, so I guess my follow-up question also, if you could find out, before this board was established, the homeopathic licenses, what board did they fall under before? Or did they have it? I see Senator Pickard shaking his head no. I don't know.
Yeah, and I might be helpful, Mr. Malgarejo. You know the forms that all boards have to fill out. They have form number 1, and then if they're an occupational licensing board, they have to fill out the secondary form as well. Is that information we collect, because then maybe you can just share all of those forms that they filled out with the subcommittee, because I believe all of that information will be on there, Assemblywoman Kasama. The forms are one of the agenda items on here, and we'll be reviewing them. But you'll see that it'll ask them like when were they created, where did they get their statutory or where did they get their authority from, where in statute can we find them. So all of that information is collected. I believe that might answer a lot of your questions.
Thank you.
I'd love to see it too. And again, we might be reviewing them this subcommittee, so we have the opportunity to bring them before us again. Mr. Malgarejo, I don't know if there was anything you wanted to add.
No,
Okay.
Madam Chair, you're exactly correct. We have all that information, so I could just consolidate that into a report for the members of the subcommittee.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, members, seeing no other questions from Mr. Malgarejo, we can go ahead and move on to our next agenda item number 6. For this order of business, we will be hearing from our audit division. We have Ms. Sandra McGurk with the audit supervisor, who will provide information on the financial standing of our professional and occupational licensing boards. Ms. McGurk, are you with us? Oh, there you are.
Sure. Good morning.
Ready for your presentation? Please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair Howdiggy and members of the subcommittee. Let me switch gears here, excuse me. For the record, my name is Sandra McGurk, Audit Supervisor. Dan Crossman, Legislative Auditor, sends his deepest apologies for not being present today. He had a family emergency to attend to. So today I will take a few minutes to discuss the financial information reporting requirements contained in NRS 218G.400 and what the Audit Division's responsibilities are in this process. NRS 218G.400 requires certain boards to obtain an audit of their financial records either annually or biannually. If the board's revenues are more than $200,000 in a fiscal year, they are required to obtain an audit of their financial statements by an independent certified public accountant. If the board's revenues are less than $200,000 in a fiscal year, the board is required to prepare a balance sheet for the fiscal year in a format prepared by our office. A report of each required audit or balance sheet must be filed with the legislative auditor and the chief of the budget division on or before December 1st of each year. When we receive the financials from the boards, we review the audit reports for unusual items such as frauds or illegal acts, proper basis of accounting, auditor's opinions, and any qualifying language in the reports. We also perform a cursory review of the financial statements for unusual items or irregularities. Boards that submit balance sheets must provide a copy of their year-end bank statement and the year-end bank reconciliations. We review these reconciliations for reasonableness and unusual reconciling items. In some cases, when reviewing the financial statements or balance sheets, we reach out to the auditors, that would be the certified public accounting auditors, or the executive director, or the staff of the boards to better understand some of the information submitted and to seek clarification on some of our questions. I think it's really important to point out here that our reviews do not constitute an audit. Our primary responsibility in statute is to receive and review financial information submitted by each board and report to the legislature on the board's compliance. While we often do inquire to clarify information, we do not audit information submitted. Our review may best be considered cursory as the results as we are not able to draw many specific conclusions. In addition to review of financial information, we also review board's compliance with the quarterly reports of disciplinary action and regulatory activities required by NRS 622.100 that must be submitted to the LCB director. This information is posted to the Nevada Legislature's website. As part of our duties, we follow up with the boards who are delinquent in filing, which includes information as the number of applications, the number of licenses issued, the number of rejected applications, and the number of disciplinary actions. As this information is available on the website to the public, we do not perform any analysis on the reported information. This letter issued in January and July includes any items of concerns we have noted and identifies the boards that have complied with filing of required financial information and quarterly disciplinary or regulatory actions. With the letter, we also include a summary of basic financial information, including boards' revenues and expenditure information. If I could direct your attention to the letter in your packet dated January 12th, 2022. In the letter, you will see that our reviews did not identify any reportable conditions or concerns that warranted being reported to you. Next, we noted that there were two boards that did not submit the required financial information. These boards, the Board of Dental Examiners and the Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners, did not file their audited financial statements with us. However, since the issuance of our letter, we have received the Board of Since the issuance of our letter, we have received the Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners' financial information. We have inquired and anticipate the Board of Dental Examiners to have their financials to us in the coming months. Copies of our letter are distributed to all legislators, the governor, and the director of the Office of Finance. Boards noted in the letter are also notified that their deficiency has been communicated to the legislature. Hopefully that provides some important information for the committee on the work we do complete and I would be happy to answer any questions the subcommittee may have.
Thank you, Ms. McGurk. I do have one question for you before I turn to the committee. On the last page, I believe it's the page 4 where Exhibit A, I noticed that there was 2 boards where their expenditures were more than their revenues. Does that mean they just dip into reserves? And is that concerning?
In those cases, yes, it's possible that they do. Sandra McGurk, audit supervisor with LCB Audit Division. In those 2 boards you're referencing, yes, they probably do dip into their reserves. And we do monitor, once we get this information, we do monitor, okay, what is the progress of the report of the boards? And if we do have any major concerns, we do reach out and say, okay, what are you planning on doing? Just so we can provide the information to the legislature. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McGurk. Yes, members, any questions? I believe Senator Elaine has a question.
Thank you. My question is about the 2 boards that didn't submit their financials, and you said you received one, but you haven't received the other. What is the procedure? What happens if they never turn it in? You report it to the legislature, but then what happens? I mean, is there any mechanism to force that to happen sooner?
The boards, as you are aware, are required to submit that information by December 1st of each year. In the case of the board that did not submit their information, I do anticipate receiving that information. They are working on it. In situations where we do not receive the information, I believe we would reach out to the Sunset Subcommittee and get direction as to what you guys would like us to do. I know in the past we have completed an audit of one of the boards based on some of the concerns of the committee.
Thank you.
And members, under public comment, there was uploaded a letter from the Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners to explaining their delay in submitting their forms to the audit division as well. So they did reach out to us and submit a letter under public comment apologizing for the delay and explaining the delay. Any further questions for Ms. McGurk? Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate your presentation.
Thank you so much. Have a good meeting.
Okay, members, we can move on to our next agenda item. Our next agenda item is agenda item number 7, and it is a presentation from the State Barbers Board. Do we have, I believe, Ms. Mastis here to present?
Good morning. This is Antoinette Maestas with the Nevada State Barbers Health and Sanitation Board.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for joining us today. When you're ready, we're ready to hear your presentation.
Okay. I'm here to report on behalf of the Nevada State Barbers Health and Sanitation Board. At the meeting that was held on August 31st, 2020, the Sunset Committee asked the board for 5 things to be worked on. I am pleased to report that all of the 5 things of the request were made, that we have accomplished all those things. The first one was our website development. Our website has been completed. It's a working tool. This allows for all licensees all the information they need at their fingertips. Licensees are able to access their accounts online and conduct all business through their portal. All applications, are available online, which makes it easy for anyone coming from another state to have complete access to any forms that are needed. The Barber Path was created, and this leads everyone through the process of becoming a barber in Nevada, whether it be someone wanting to attend school, a cosmetologist wanting to cross over to barbering, or an individual coming into Nevada through endorsement. It is very simple to follow and gives all information needed. We are now seeing more individuals using the website. All of our complaints are now being submitted through the website. The website allows for consumers, other state boards, or any individual to verify a license. As any website, this is being updated frequently, and we are making changes to make it more efficient all the time. The second thing was modernization of practices. All of our board meetings are available teleconference for anyone that does not want to attend in person. And the website has made things much easier for individuals. All licensees can pay any fees online now. They ask that we work with the cosmetology board, and we continue to build our relationship with the cosmetology board. Miss Maggie Adams has been a great asset to our board. She's always willing to answer any questions we may have. And if she doesn't know the answer, she'll find out and let us know. We have worked together on joint inspections several times. We also work on consumer complaints together. The fourth thing was increasing frequency of testing and licensing. We're testing every 3 to 4 weeks. This seems to be working out very well. We have an average of 25 applicants testing during each exam. This allows for students to graduate school and be able to work in a timely manner. Once the applicant examines, if they pass the exam, they can start to work immediately. On endorsements, once we have a completed application, the license is issued the same day. All payments are made through online. They can be made online. They can still come into our office, mail them, however they wish to do that. These are the 5 areas the committee had asked us to work on, and we were able to achieve what was asked of us. We feel our board is a work in progress, and we will continue to strive to make it better and more efficient. I would also like to add that we have 2 new board members that are working hard and bringing new ideas to the table. We also have our very first barber school in the Reno area that opened up last year, and this is going to help to serve Northern Nevada individuals wishing to attend barber school. I hope that I have answered the questions that were presented to the board prior at the last Sunset Committee meetings. And if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Maestas. I appreciate you being here and presenting an update on the recommendations from our last interim subcommittee. I know my colleague, our Vice Chair, Senator Spearman, probably would have had a handful of questions for you. So I'm disappointed that she's not here for your presentation, but I'm going to turn to my colleague, Senator Pickard, who I see his hand is raised and I know worked very closely with our Vice Chair on this issue as well. Senator Pickard?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And my question, I'm really pleased to hear that you've modernized and updated things. I mean, some of the testimony we received, I don't remember if it was I think it was 2 interims ago, was a little startling as to how antiquated the board was in dealing with licensing and testing particularly. And in reviewing, I've got it on my screen, in reviewing your comments about licensing and testing, it looks like we didn't quite get to where we as a board were hoping. If you were there, you'll recall the discussion or the testimony about how someone had to go into an active barber's location in order to do the practical testing, and they had to wait until that barber's customer was done and they had time to do the practical test. And then, of course, because of the lack of modernization and availability of access to online procedures, it just made it difficult. So, but you've addressed the other things where you're now doing all the fees online, the forms are online. They have a quick turnaround for the endorsements. So those things I'm happy to hear are resolved. But can you talk a little bit about the testing and licensing? In looking over what you've suggested, it looks like PSI has been at least in conversations about doing some of these tests or making them available whenever the applicant needs them. Can you go a little deeper into what it is that the board is doing to make sure people can get licensed quickly if they're eligible to take that exam, and so that we can get them off of the unemployment rolls or whatever they may be and into the workforce?
Absolutely. So we don't test, we test in barber
Maestas, if you would
schools.
just identify yourself for the record.
I apologize.
No
Antoinette
worries.
Maestas, Nevada State Barber Board. So we test in barber schools. Those exams are held every 3 to 4 weeks. So when a student graduates school, if they're not quite done, I mean, if we have a deadline, when the deadline hits, if they're going to be done before the exam date, we allow them to turn their paperwork in. We set them up. As long as they finish their hours before the test, we allow them to test. Now that we do endorsement, we don't have as many licensees testing. It's mainly just students out of school. As far as the PSI goes, we worked with, it was suggested that we work with the cosmetology board to see if they could do our testing. They could not do our testing. They don't have water in their building where they test at. We need water to do shades. So that's why every 3 to 4 weeks, we test in a school, and that's when they take their test and get licensed. I hope I answered your question. Did I, Senator Pickard?
Sort of. I mean, one of the things that we were most concerned about when this came up was the fact that the participants, the applicants rather, had to wait for significant periods of time before they could sit for an exam. As I recall, it was 3 to 4 months. I think it was like once a quarter they were put on. The schools, I presume, are open daily. 3 to 4 weeks, particularly for a student, and I forget if it's an 8-week or a 16-week or a 52-week course. I don't remember how long the courses are for the barbers, but you've got someone who's been paying money out in order to participate in the schooling. They need to start earning money pretty quickly. 3 to 4 weeks doesn't seem like a lot to us, maybe, but I suspect for them to have to wait 3 or 4 weeks to get into a school that's open daily, is there some way we can speed that process up? What is it that's making them wait 3 to 4 weeks to take a test when they're ready that day?
Antoinette Maestas, Nevada State Barber Board. So they take the test. We hold exams every 3 to 4 weeks. And I mean, right now we're testing about 25 a month every 3 to 4 weeks. It's not a large turnaround. And to be honest, a lot of these students, once they get out of school, they want to spend time preparing for the exam. I know that we had talked about the cosmetology board testing every day. They do test their written exams every day, but their practical exams are not held every day. And then they're backlogged because they can only test so many at a time. Once these students graduate, within 3 to 4 weeks, they're in the workforce working. We will get everybody in and test them. We stay very current on our testing. We're not behind. They can test every 3 to 4 weeks if that's what they choose to do.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And that's disappointing to hear that the cosmetology board can't do the practical exams daily, although I suspect that may be a demand issue. People may not be signing up for them. But Mr. Landry, who was the executive director, I think he still is, he had suggested they could do that pretty much on the next day notice kind of thing. But we'll explore that. I don't want to take too much time on this, but Chair Howdigi, thank you for letting me explore this a little bit. When they come back up, I do think this is worthy of digging in a little bit because if the 3 to 4 weeks for testing is a demand issue that, it's a proper flow. They want 3 to 4 weeks to take that. I have no problem with that. I just think that if there's a possibility to get them in on a shorter basis, to get them earning money, that's, I think, what Senator Spearman was really driving at, and I supported that. So thank you for your indulgence for letting me go on a little bit.
Yes, thank you, Senator Pickard. You got to fill in for Senator Spearman. Thank you. And any other questions for Ms. Maestas? I'm going to do one quick. Let me go into a grid view. Members. Okay, Ms. Maestas, and I just want to clarify something. So you just mentioned that they could take their practical exam, their written exam every day, but it's the written exam is available to them every day, but the actual exam where they work on a live subject is only 3 to 4 weeks, correct? But the other part is daily.
Antoinette Maestas, Nevada State Barber Board, for the record. No, we examine the written and the practical all on the same day.
Okay.
So we do not offer it daily.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that because I had written it down incorrectly. Well, thank you so much for being here. I do appreciate that you guys made these advances in the other areas of recommendations. And I know the 3 to 4 weeks is still a little bit long for some members, but I think we've made major improvements from 3 to 4 months. So I do appreciate that. And if there is possibility of making them shorter, I know that the members on here, and I'm sure the students would appreciate that as well. But we do want to thank you for being here and taking the time to answer and our questions and give us an update on the status of the recommendations.
And Madam Chair, if I may, I shouldn't leave it where I left it. I should say that I sincerely appreciate the effort of the Barber Board to make such a substantial improvement in a short period of time. I know we kind of put a gun to their head, so they had to, but they responded very well. And I just wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you, Senator. And thank you, Ms. Maestas, for being here.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, members, and for those who are new on the subcommittee, I guess I should have just given you some insight into what the next 3 agenda items were. The agenda item number 7, 8, and 9, but agenda items 7, 8, and 9 are follow-ups from boards that the last interim sunset subcommittee reviewed and we had recommendations for. And so now they're coming before us again to update us on the recommendations that we had requested from our last sunset subcommittee. So just to give you some insight on why we're hearing from some boards and commissions today. So we reviewed the Barbers Board last interim. We also reviewed the Real Estate Commission, who will be presenting next, as well as the Nevada Funeral and Cemetery Services Board. So they are here just updating us on recommendations that we had requested from our last sunset subcommittee. So with that, our next agenda item is agenda item number 8, and that is an update from the Real Estate Commission. We have Sharath Chandra, the administrator of the Real Estate Division, here to present. Last interim, the Sunset Subcommittee voted to continue the commission with some recommendations. And Mr. Director Chandra, are you here? Oh, there you are. I see you. Thank you for joining us. When you're ready, you can please proceed. Please begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Sharath Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. Thank you for this opportunity. Just as an update to the last subcommittee, like the chair pointed out, the subcommittee reviewed the division's boards. There were 2 items the committee discussed. One was reviewing more ways to implement SB 69, and that was, I think, Senator Pickard and some folks from the 2017 session. So there's just a few follow-ups on that discussion that we'd had. So, you know, we've constantly tried to go back and look at what are the things that we can do to make sure that, you know, there is that flow of out-of-state folks that are licensed in other states, and how do we kind of, you know, bring some equivalency. And, you know, a couple of things were the testing. So if you have a license in another state, you don't have to test. The national testing. There are some instances where the state test is required, but for the majority of the folks, there is no testing required. Applicants that hold a current real estate salesperson license and we went back and looked at the equivalency in all the different states. And so essentially, if you have a real estate license in another state, a salesperson's license, and the states are listed, I believe it's a majority of the states, you will not be then you would be recognized here in Nevada. So you would do the application, you do the background check, but the testing and all those things are not required. There may be a little bit of education that is required because of the standards are different, but then there are a whole set of other states where, because some of the states don't have the same stringency of tests of education that Nevada does. So if you're a broker sales, then you would be provided a salesperson's license here in Nevada. And that's how we match up the equivalency. So those are some of the things that we've done to streamline this. And also on the education side, if you have existing experience, then that experience counts towards reducing that education. So there are obviously certain circumstances, depending on the application, what we will review, but for the majority of kind of what Senator Pickard had kind of talked about, these are the things that have been done to make sure that there is that equivalency and that reciprocity. I think the second one, what I'll do is I'll go over this, Chair, and then I'll stop, and then I'm sure if folks have questions, we can always come back. And then the last question again was a question on the use of the cooperative broker certificate, and this is something that we've had a lot of litigation on over the last couple of years. There's still some pending litigation in front of the First Circuit, but really essentially what the cooperative broker certificate does in Nevada is it allows an out-of-state broker who is unlicensed in Nevada to help somebody purchase property. And that's really the premise for that certificate. It's a one-time use that allows somebody to represent a buyer, out-of-state buyer, to buy property in Nevada by working with a licensed Nevada broker. And so that's really the premise of the cooperative certificate. There have been questions on, well, why can't the cooperative certificate be used to represent a seller? And the whole idea is you have to be licensed in Nevada to transact real estate. And so that is the very summary of it. I mean, there's of course some levels of detail in here, but that was really the essence of the broker certificate. And the language in the regulation is the division has always followed the same interpretation of the language. And so that's the only time that we probably gets reviewed is when the commission does any changes to regulation. And I believe the last regulatory change that was on the regulation and the commission discussed it, but figured, or at least discussed it and left that regulation unchanged. But again, you know, every regulation change, it is always something that the commission could consider. With that, I'll stop and then happy to take any questions.
I'm on. Thank you, Director Chandra. I believe I'm going to have some questions from my colleagues, Senator Pickard and Assemblywoman Kasama. I'm going to start with Senator Pickard. I saw his hand go up first, so I'm going to jump to Senator Pickard, and then Assemblywoman Kasama will come to you.
Thank you, Chair Howdy. And Mr. Chandra, it's always great to see you. You're probably my favorite director or administrator that we have, if only because I understand you as a broker. I understand what we're talking about. And I just wanted to touch on the cooperative certificate that you just mentioned. I was particularly vocal, and this is for the benefit of the new members of the committee. I was particularly vocal about this because as a developer myself, we use often we use the same team of realtors and professionals in whatever state we're in, because we will look at a project and we will have a team of people put together that will execute the development plan in whatever state we're in. And so what would happen is if we had a developer here in Nevada who wanted to build in Nevada, we couldn't use the team that we had developed. In my case, it was an outfit out of Salt Lake City. We couldn't use them because they were representing a Nevada owner that was developing in Nevada. And so I ended up, and Mr. Chandra, this is now for your benefit. After our last conversation, I circled back with them and asked them, you know, how difficult is this? And though it increases cost, they recognize that when they're working with anyone in Nevada, they just deal with it. And so they didn't feel particularly compelled to, move that any further, because I seem to be the lone wolf crying in the wilderness, asking for a change. But at the end of the day, speaking of your litigation, I did have them contact me, or representatives of at least one of the entities that were involved in that litigation reach out to me. And I said, look, we can't really do things when there is litigation pending, but this is something that they were particularly interested in addressing. But we didn't make any changes in the last legislative session. And my understanding is you're not bringing any changes. From what you just said, you're not recommending any changes to the regulations. So I think we're just going to stick with the status quo. But I appreciate your efforts. My question is then, what is the status of the litigation? You said you've got something in at the circuit court level. Can you give me just a brief update on how that's going and what anything we've done has or might affect that?
Thank you, Senator Pickard. Again, appreciate all of your input and really the level of nuance and detail that you have an understanding of our organization is admirable, and always we've really been able to answer and have a dialogue. So I appreciate that. On the litigation side, it's been going on for 6 years, and so it's complex. But really, the summary of it is our answers were due to the First Judicial District Court here in. So essentially, all the cases were consolidated. And so now our responses are due. I believe once there is a ruling, I think there is going to be a lot more clarity. And our position has always been clear. We do not want to put Nevada realtors in an unfair position because we are requiring them to do all these things. And someone from an out-of-state position should not be able to just come in here and do business without meeting those standards. So we just wanted a level playing field for everybody. And I think that has always been the premise. And of course, as you know, we always step back and say, what is this for? And this is really to protect the public. Ultimately, that is really what we want to do, make it fair and protect the public. And so that's really the summary on this, sir. But again, you know, as you want, as you need, we'll go into a little more detail if you want.
All right, thank you very much.
Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you so much, Chair, and good to see you again, Mr. Chandra. I'm a broker as well, too, so everyone knows that. Senator Pickard brought up a lot of the points and questions that I had as well, and I'm very happy to hear that you are strong with the stance that you need to be licensed in the state to perform services, because all of us have gone through those licensing procedures and we respect those. Is there legislation that you perhaps do want to consider so to make things even more clear to avoid possibly other lawsuits like this one that's been dragging on for 6 years? I'm just inquiring if there's something there that could be helpful that is needed, that the real estate division feels is needed to help avoid something like this in the future.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Kasama. And of course, yes, we work together, and your leadership at the local organizations is greatly appreciated. Great question. It's one of those Pandora's boxes, though. Historically, our enforcement has always been consistent. Our interpretation has been consistent. And this lawsuit and all the casework is, again, an indication of everything that our position has been, is just, this is our position and that has not changed. Now, will legislation help? Absolutely. But also, I don't think it would change anything on the ground. And so, again, if there is something out there that you feel that would really help, we can definitely discuss and see. But I personally, at this point, I don't really anticipate us wanting anything more than what it is. But again, happy to discuss and explore options.
Thank you so much. I hear what you're saying. The regulations are there. They're good, and somebody just challenged them, I think is what I'm hearing. So appreciate that comment. Thank you.
Members, any other questions for Director Chandra? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much, Director, for being here with us this morning. We appreciate it. Okay, members, agenda item number 9. Last interim, the Sunset Subcommittee voted to send a letter to several entities encouraging their continued discussion to improve the timeliness of death reporting, including increasing awareness of updates to statutes that authorize an attending physician or APRN to initiate the record of death and provide the required information at the time of death. Ms. Kant, the Executive Director of the Nevada Funeral and Cemetery Services Board, and Mr. Diaz, Chief of Investigations for the Board of Medical Examiners, are here to provide an update on their efforts. Do we have Ms. Kant and Mr. Diaz on? Okay, I see you both on. So whoever wants to begin, please, when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to be here to give you this update. I have just a quick PowerPoint that I'll go through if that's okay. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. So basically we are, let's see. In June of 2020, the Funeral and Cemetery Services Board was, we brought to the attention of the Sunset Subcommittee of the Legislative Commission some delays we had with the death reporting process. Specifically, my office was getting quite a few complaints from funeral homes and from families that doctors were not signing death certificates timely. And when you don't have the cause of death signed off on the death certificate, you can't have a funeral or a cremation. So it, was something that my office was getting quite a few complaints on. In August of 2020, the Sunset Subcommittee voted to send letters to various boards and agencies and recommend that we work together to figure out how we can expedite the records process for these families. And then in October 2020, Senator Spearman sent us all a letter advising us of the request. And then in December, we were asked to give this update. So that's what we're here to do. The agencies that received the request were the Board of Medical Examiners. Obviously, they oversee the doctors who are required to sign off on the cause of death. The State Board of Osteopathic Medicine, and that's because what they call DOs are also authorized to sign off cause of death. State Board of Nursing, because it was recently allowed that APRNs could sign death certificates. Obviously, my board is, we deal with the funeral homes experiencing these issues. The Bureau of Healthcare Quality and Compliance, and they oversee all of the healthcare facilities and hospitals. The State Registrar of Vital Statistics, they're the ones that actually process all of those records and issue the permits. And then the State Board of Health is kind of that umbrella agency. We determined that there were probably 3 obstacles to the timely death reporting. First of all, it was the certifier not signing the death certificate timely for whatever reason that may be, sometimes technology, sometimes on vacation, just a variety of issues, but that was one of the obstacles. The second was the funeral homes not entering the basic information into the EDRS system timely. So when they receive custody of the body, they're supposed to enter some very basic information into the EDRS system within 24 hours and assign that record to the physician. Well, we found that sometimes they were waiting until the family was giving them all of the information for the complete death certificate. And that was then delaying the time that the doctor was actually getting the record. So if the doctor was getting the record 3 or 4 days after the death occurred, that's just off his radar at that point, so, or her. And then the family not providing vital information for the record. I mean, that is a problem for the actual completion of the death certificate. That's really something outside of our control, but those were the obstacles that we thought were the most significant. So we started with some meetings and discussions between several of the boards and agencies. I will say that Ernesto Diaz from the medical board really led this charge, and he's done a great job keeping us all focused on the task. And we started with meetings between the medical board, myself, Vital Records, because it really was probably focused on our agencies the most. Shana Reinhart and Stephanie Herrera, we were meeting with from Vital Records, kind of just talking about the issues and what we should do and what we thought we could do to improve. We did some very basic things like email blasts to our licensees. For the funeral board, it was reminding the funeral homes that they are required to start that record within 24 hours with just that very basic information, like I discussed, and not waiting for the family to provide all of the information before it gets assigned to the doctor. The medical board had created a newsletter that they already have the newsletter, but they put into their newsletter an article that Vital Records had written, and that got sent to all the licensees. We have some website links with information. So on the funeral board website, we have some EDRS information on our main page under hot topics. The medical board has they keep all of their newsletters on their website as well, so they can look at, so people can go back and look at those newsletters. We have, in terms of educating people, Vital Records, they did create these how-to videos, and they now send them with all new user access. We did find that sometimes the delays with doctor signing was problems with technology. They couldn't access the system for some reason. They were on a laptop, and the laptop didn't have the correct software to make the changes that they need to. So Vital Records has really been the one that's helped move that along in terms of if the medical board gets noticed that a doctor is having a problem. Ernie has been very good about contacting Vital Records, and then Vital Records assisting with the technology for the doctor. Vital Records, they also offer live webinar trainings now at the request of anyone can have a live webinar training. They also created some training videos that are based on the rules within EDRS. So whether you're a doctor or funeral home, et cetera, there are some training videos, and those do have, information reminding them of the various laws on the timeframes associated with needing to sign records. The medical board is also assisting with getting the Vital Records trainings that are offered approved for continuing medical education. And there is a cost to that. It's not, hugely significant. I think it's around $750, but, that is a little bit of an obstacle, but we offered to assist with paying for that approval just because this issue affects our industry so greatly. And we have some training monies that we could use for that. So we're working on that now. We also have a law training that we have in the past given free to all of our licensees. And we used to offer that live, but obviously with COVID, we haven't done that. So we've recently revised that, and we're going to start offering that remotely. And we've included more information on the timeliness of death reporting. Some of the efforts to enforce what's already there, the medical board did provide a dedicated staff member to assist the funeral homes when there are delays with doctor signing. And that's been probably, I would say, the largest help in this whole process. So Ernesto Diaz is the contact for the funeral homes where if they're having a problem with a doctor signing, they can contact his office, and that complaint process, that formal complaint process, is somewhat bypassed. I mean, they're still required to submit a complaint form, but they also can call Ernesto right away, advise them of the problem, and he can immediately start making phone calls and emails to that doctor instead of waiting for this long complaint process that is, kind of set up for us as licensing boards, what we have to do, but and the DO board does that as well. And then we investigate cases involving the funeral homes not creating those records timely, and we do have several of those cases open right now. The recent feedback from multiple funeral homes, our larger ones over the past year, is that the doctor signing timely has been greatly improved, specifically by being able to contact the medical board for assistance and having that dedicated person that they could reach out to, and that person who did respond immediately as opposed to waiting on it, because we're talking about something that needs to be done, you know, immediately for these families. The medical board did report assisting 14 funeral homes over the past year, although Ernesto informed me it's actually 15 as of yesterday, and that included over 43 complaints, I believe, of doctors not signing timely. And then again, we have multiple active cases with funeral homes failing to create the record within 24 hours. And with that, I don't know if there are any questions for either of us.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kent. Was Mr. Diaz going to present, or is he just here to answer questions?
He's just here for questions, a support person. And I do have to say, I mean, he's done an amazing job and their office has been really helpful. So we appreciate their efforts greatly.
Thank you, Ms. Kent, for your presentation. Members, is there questions for Ms. Kent or Mr. Diaz? Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for, it sounds like you've made a lot of great improvements, and having a dedicated staff certainly sounds like what was needed and helpful. My question is, during the last session, we passed a new election bill that has the vital statistics, needs to be reporting deaths to the election offices in each county now. And have you worked on that, incorporate that into the training? How are you going to help assist with that new reporting requirement?
Jennifer Camp, for the record. I wouldn't have information on that. That would probably be something that would need to come from Vital Records. I could certainly attempt to get that information for you, but it's not information that I would have.
Great.
Any follow-up? Oh. Any follow-up, Assemblywoman Kasama?
I think it would be useful for us as the legislature to maybe have somebody from present a report from the Vital Records, how they're going to start implementing that, just so we make sure it's starting to move along.
And then maybe we can have that during one of our presentations during the Sunset Subcommittee. I'll make sure to talk with our policy analyst about scheduling them in. Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Kent and Mr. Diaz.
Thank you.
Okay, and before we move on to our next agenda item, I noticed that we still do have the Barbers Board on here. Our vice chair hasn't been able to join us yet. I know she's still planning on joining us as soon as she can, but she had sent in a question that she had wanted to make sure we asked of the Barbers Board. So if we still do have them on, I would like to get the vice chair's question on the record.
Antoinette Maestas, for the record, I am still here.
Thank you so much, Ms. Maestas. I appreciate you hanging in there and waiting with us. I had a question that I wanted to just ask for our vice chair. I know last interim subcommittee, she had mentioned that she had received a complaint from a veteran about a school not accepting a GI Bill. And so I just wanted to ask the board for the record, if you are aware of any local barber schools that have started to accept GI Bills?
Antoinette Maestas, for the record, I am not aware of it. They're privately owned schools, so we can't really tell them who they can and can't accept.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And I appreciate you just jumping back on for allowing me to ask that and get that on the record.
No problem.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I, this is Keith Pickard for the record. If I could just tack on to that question, one thing that comes to mind is we need to make sure that there aren't requirements under the GI Bill program that limit access to private schools. There's something in the back of my head telling me that there may be some limitations there. So we might want to look into that.
Ms. Masters, if I see you're still on and you've unmuted yourself, so thank you. But and can you touch on that? Is there limitations for private schools? Are these private schools can apply for accreditation, correct?
And Antoinette Mayes, just for the record, yes, they can. I know, like, fine. I don't know about the veteran thing. I know that for financial aid, it takes several years for them to be able to qualify for that. And I know that there are schools working on accreditation for financial aid. So I'm not quite sure on what the VA requirements are.
But there is an accreditation process for them.
Correct.
Okay. Do you happen to know if there's any barber schools in other states who do have that accreditation?
I do not know offhand. Like I said, most of the schools are privately owned, and I know it's a long process. I do know that. But we don't deal with the financial part of the schools themselves because they are privately owned.
Okay, thank you. Senator Pickard, last call.
No, that was just it. I seem to remember a discussion at some point in the past about the GI Bill, and what was just popping up in my mind was there was some limitation that had to do with a federal limitation, but I don't remember if that was for purposes of financial aid. It's something that we should probably have LCB look into.
Thank you, Senator. And thank you so much, Ms. Maestas. We appreciate you hanging in there with us. Okay, members, we are now moving on to agenda item number 10. This is where we get to select which boards, commissions, and similar entities we get to review during this interim. I am going to have our committee policy analyst come back to present to us, Mr. Malgarejo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Cesar Malgarejo, Committee Policy Analyst. So under this agenda item, we've uploaded 3 separate documents. One is a large document, which is a master table of boards and commissions and similar entities. The second document is actually, this was the interest of the chair. She was wondering which boards and commissions hadn't met in some time. So staff put together this list of boards and commissions that haven't met since 2019. I know that during the last 2 years, there's been some difficulty for some of these boards and commissions to meet given the COVID situation. So we selected these boards based on the 2019 calendar. And the third document that has been uploaded, as I mentioned during my review of the Sunset Subcommittee, the subcommittee has 2 official duties. One is to review boards and commissions and similar entities that are established in statute. And the second duty is to review, is to collect certain information from certain entities to determine whether the restrictions on the criminal history of an applicant for an occupational professional license is appropriate. This is a new requirement for the subcommittee that passed in 2019. And so really we're discussing 2 different items here. We're discussing the selection of the statute boards and commissions that the subcommittee wants to review this interim. And we're also discussing this list of regulatory bodies so we can question their restrictions on the criminal history for applicants. For the document of the boards that haven't met since 2019 and the master document, if you look at the table, we have a column that for notes, reviews, and recommendation. So the grayed out boards are those boards that the subcommittee has reviewed in the past. And we've also tried to include notes of recent legislation or include notes, where staff reaches out to the administrators for these bodies. And we include notes such as, the board is trying to appoint new members, or the board has appointed new members and they're still trying to meet, or things such as that. So as the chair mentioned, this is where you get to select the boards and commissions that you would like to review at this moment.
Thank you, Mr. Malgarejo. And subcommittee, keep in mind again, as Mr. Malgarejo had presented at the beginning, that we are required to review a minimum of 10 entities, but we are not limited to that number. We can consider more if we have time. And from now until we are required to convene our business, we will likely have monthly meetings from now through June 30th. And it is my goal to review approximately 4 to 5 boards every month. So I would like for us to select anywhere from 16 to 20 boards to review. That being said, I did work with Mr. Malgarejo during the time leading up to this meeting to look at boards that haven't met in some time, because it's my goal to review boards for efficiency and effectiveness. In addition to that, we do have those regulatory bodies that we have to review for their restrictions on criminal history and the appropriateness of it. So I would like to move forward by doing this in 2 separate parts, but have it wrapped up to be one motion at the end. So first, I would like for us to select the 16 to 20 bodies that we will review in the subcommittee for recommendations or for sunset or for continuation. And once we come up with those, I would like us to move forward to review the regulatory bodies and select a handful of bodies to review for their appropriateness on restrictions of criminal history. I would like the body to look at the attachment that Mr. Malgarejo was referring to. It's a list of 19 boards, commissions, and entities that have not met since prior to 2019. It's a total of 19 entities, but 3 of them we've been in touch with and only meet when it is necessary for them to meet. So that is the Nevada Threat Analysis Center and Advisory Committee, the Gaming Policy Committee, and the Nevada High-Speed Rail Authority. So I would like to make a recommendation, since our goal is again to review boards for their efficiency and effectiveness and their need to continue or be sunsetted, to review these boards that haven't met since prior to 2019. Just these 16 boards and then any additional boards that you would like to add. I see that Senator Pickard's hand is up. Senator Pickard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I completely agree with you. This is something that Chair Usmani Adams tried to address, and we did take a bunch of boards that hadn't been yet reviewed. I would, however, like to make sure that we circle back with the homeopathic board and the barber board to make sure that things are progressing as they are expected to. So, but if that was a motion, I'll second it for the others. I certainly agree that we really need to be looking at this, because our whole purpose is to look at boards that don't need to exist. And, you know, the definition of not needing to exist is boards that haven't met and that only meet because they need, or they only meet when they need to. If they've never met in the last couple of years, it's a great question. I'm not saying that necessarily means they're not needed, you know, so like the existence of a threat. We only deal with that as the threat arises. So but we should be talking to them and asking them if they think that this is really needed, or is there another committee that could pick it up? You know, the governor certainly has the power to address emergencies on his own, as we've seen over the past almost 3 years. It's, you know, I completely agree with you, but I just want to make sure we don't lose track of those 2 other boards.
And I wrote down the first board, Senator Pickard, the homeopathic board. Which was the second?
The barber board.
So you would like to review the barber board again this interim?
Well, I just want to make sure that we don't have them drop off our radar screen. I don't think that we need a full review necessarily. But both are incomplete in their meeting the requests of the last interim board or last interim review. So I want to make sure that we have a follow-up with them scheduled at some point, probably toward the end of our interim meetings, so that they can report back on whether or not they've completed what was expected, and if not, what more needs to happen. And how the legislature can support that. You know, and maybe, for example, with the homeopathic board, it's writing maybe a more pointed letter to the executive to make sure those appointments are made, because, you know, this is a public safety issue and we need to make sure those boards are functioning.
Okay, thank you, Senator Pickard. So we have the homeopathic board and the barbers board for a follow-up, but not necessarily a full review of the sunset subcommittee. Committee members, in addition to the 16 boards that have not met since 2019 that I would like to review from the list provided by our policy analyst, and the 2 boards that have been recommended by Senator Pickard, are there any additional boards, commissions, or similar entities that you would like pooled for review by the sunset subcommittee? And it can be from the very big list that our policy analyst provided of the. Okay, I will give you guys a couple of minutes to just review the attachments that our policy analyst provided on all of the boards and commissions. I will give you till about 10:35 to review that, to see if there's anything else you would like to add. And if there are no further additions, then we will move on to our next item so that we can roll them both into one motion. Members, I will give you about another minute to review. Okay, members, any additions that you would like to add to the list of boards and commissions that we will review this interim? Okay, raise your hand if you'd like to add anything. Okay, then let's go ahead and move on to our next the next list, which is the regulatory bodies that we are required to review to determine whether the restrictions on criminal history of an applicant for occupational licensing is appropriate. We are not required by statute to review the entire list every interim. So what I would like to do is make a selection from this list and then move forward every interim with reviewing a handful until we have reviewed them all, and then continue to cycle through the list. I would like to make a recommendation, and then again, members, I will turn to you to see if there's any other bodies that you would like to add, but I would like to make a recommendation that we review all of the regulatory bodies on here that are within the Department of Wildlife and the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 departments. Is there any other departments that the committee would like to add? And these are formatted differently. These will just, Mr. Malgarejo will present these all together. When he receives responses from all of the regulatory bodies, he will just go through the responses of all of them. So we will not have these bodies before us. Committee members, it's 4 pages of departments. Any other departments you would like to add? Okay, seeing none, then I'm going to try to roll this into a motion, but someone would like to make a motion to review the 16 boards, commissions, and entities that have not met since 2019, with the exception of the 3 that we carved out, as well as review the regulatory bodies for appropriateness of the restrictions on criminal history that we have laid out, which are the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and the Department of Wildlife. Someone would like to make that motion to review these entities?
Madam Chair, if I may just ask a quick question, will you please restate the 3 that you want to carve out?
Absolutely. Let me grab those for you. So in the exhibit that our policy analyst provided, there was the large list of all of the boards, commissions, and entities that we can review. And then the second exhibit was boards, commissions, and various entities that have not met since 2019. That was a total list of 19 boards. I would like to review them all, with the exception of the Nevada Threat Analysis Center and Advisory Committee. That committee was newly formed in 2019 and is getting ready to have their first meeting. And the other 2 boards that I would like to remove are the Nevada High-Speed Rail Authority and the Gaming Policy Committee, which are the 2 entities that only meet when it is necessary for them to meet.
All right, I'll go ahead and make that motion as stated.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. This is Assemblywoman Marzola.
I have a first from Senator Pickard and a second from Assemblywoman Marzola. I'm going to look to Mr. Malgarejo. Was that an okay motion? Can we move forward with that motion as I read it?
Yes, Madam Chair. I think we've identified the 16 boards to review and the entities that you want to evaluate for criminal history applications.
Perfect. And then we'll, since we're not fully reviewing the 2 recommendations from Senator Pickard, I didn't include them in the motion because we're not giving them a full review, but we will have them present before us. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none. Since we don't have Senator Spearman here, can we just, instead of doing a roll call vote, can we just take a vote? If you are in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Okay, looks like the motion carries unanimously. Okay, our next agenda item, discussion on possible revisions to the forms that we send out to the boards, commissions, and entities that we review here in the Sunset Subcommittee. The 2 forms are in the exhibit area. You should have received them also from Mr. Malgarejo as an email prior to our meeting so that you guys could get started reviewing them. These are the forms that we've always used here in the Sunset Subcommittee. I've had an opportunity to review them and don't see anything that needs to be taken out or any additional additions, but I would like for the subcommittee to review form number 1, which is sent out to every entity that we review, as well as form number 2, which is the additional form that is sent out to any board that we're reviewing or entity that we're reviewing that is also an occupational licensing board. So if there is anything that the committee members would like to add to any of these forms or omit from any of these forms, now is our time to have that discussion. Mr. Malgarejo, while they review the forms, do you want to take a moment to discuss or review the forms?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Cesar Malgarejo, Committee Policy Analyst. You're correct on review form number 1, just for the new members for the subcommittee. A lot of these questions are required by statute. They are not in numerical order. They're kind of spread out throughout the form. And the rest of the questions were actually added throughout the interims. And with form number 2, this form was created, I believe, last interim, because there was such a focus on Title 54 occupational licensing boards that are independently run and operated. We created this form just to get additional information from those. And so this was created last interim. A lot of these questions kind of are duplicate from form 1 and 2, mainly because just to keep track of the forms themselves and just to try to consolidate some of the answers for the occupational licensing boards. Madam Chair, did you want me to discuss form 3, or do you want to wait on that?
Yeah, if you can discuss it, because we'll take them all in one motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sunset form review form 3, this would be new for this interim. The Sunset Subcommittee. These questions that you see, they are specific to the criminal history information that the Sunset Subcommittee is required to collect. These 3 questions come directly from statute. This is the information that we're required to collect. I would note that I would suggest a staff to maybe add some technical clarification like we did in the other forms, just to ask the entities that submit this form to provide a timeline of when certain applications were received. These entities that are required, the subcommittee is required to receive criminal history, review their criminal history restrictions. The statute is not specific whether we're supposed to review these entities every single year or just a time frame. So I would ask that we just include that we ask the regulatory bodies to provide just a time frame of every 6 months to identify when the applicants applied for a review of their criminal history. It would just help us to provide better information to you. And that's a technical change. So I don't know if that really needs to be voted on, but as staff suggestion.
Okay, and applications. So a timeline, would you like, a timeline of when applications were requested to be reviewed?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
In addition to that question to be added to form 3, members, are there any other changes you would like to see in forms 1, 2, or 3?
Madam Chair.
Oh, Vice Chair Spearman.
Hi there. I'm sorry, I just landed. I don't know if you've covered this already, but the questions that I had that I was sending to you email while I was on the plane is every board is supposed to be providing us information on how veterans applications are being handled. How many applied, how many were licensed, how long did it take, and if those who were rejected, why were they rejected? And we rarely get that information from any of the boards. So I'm not sure if you've covered that already, but I think we really need to make sure that that information is coming to us, because when it doesn't, if boards are not, if they're not doing the right thing by our veterans, then they're doing a disservice to our veterans. And I'm really concerned about that. And we rarely get that information from them. That's all.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And Vice Chair, that is information that's already requested, right? It's not, you just wanted to make sure that it's being sent. It's not new questions that you want added to form 2.
Right. And those, some provide that information, but most of them don't. They just kind of breeze over that. And there's a reason that we've been working on this, because when our military members, when they leave active duty, we got to do more than just say thank you for your service. We've got to do things that actually show tangible gratitude for that service.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And Mr. Malgarejo, are those questions on form 1 or form 2? Do you happen to know off the top of your head? I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, Cesar Magrejo for the record. Those questions are not included in any of the forms, mainly because they're not specific to the work of the Sunset Subcommittee. it is, as Senator Spearman stated, it's a requirement under statute for the independent occupational licensing boards to collect and report to the legislature and to the Interagency Council on Veterans Affairs. This information falls under NRS 622.100 and NRS 622.120. So this is information that is required to be reported to, again, the legislature and to the Interagency Council on Veterans Affairs. In last interim, we put together an expansive report of occupational professional licensing, and we asked this information of them as well. But it has, before the previous interim, it has not been asked before.
Okay, and so it was asked during the last interim, right? And so do we have a list of the boards and the boards that have not returned the information?
Madam Chair, I believe there was only 2 boards that did not submit that information. One was the homeopathic board because there was no members and they weren't able to compile and answer this information. And then 2, it was the optometry board did not submit the information. And to the rest of the members, we can I can distribute the report that we were discussing, so you get a better understanding. So after today's meeting, I can send that report back out to all of the members, so you get a better understanding of what we're talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Malgado. That would be greatly appreciated. Okay, members, so I'm going to do one last call. It looks like we will move forward with these forms as they are, with the addition to form number 3 to add a question for a timeline request from the entity on when the applications were requested to be reviewed. Any other? Okay. Anyone interested in making a motion to accept the forms as is with the addition to form 3 of that question?
So moved.
Dominate, but happy to make the motion.
I have a first from Vice Chair Spearman, and it looks like I have a second from Senator Pickard.
Take the second.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, because we do have Senator Spearman on now, but we can't see her. I'm going to ask Mr. Malgarejo for a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Elaine,
Yes.
Senator Pickard,
Yes.
Senator Spearman,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Kasama,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Marzola,
Yes.
and Chair Hodegui.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, committee members. Okay, it looks like our last agenda item is public comment. As a reminder, we ask those who are participating in public comment to keep their testimony to 3 minutes. In addition, public comment may be provided in the 4 different formats that we stated at the beginning of the meeting. BPS, is there anyone waiting to make public comment?
Chair, there are no callers for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, any comments from committee members before we adjourn? Okay, seeing none, that concludes our meeting for today. I would like to let the committee members know that our next meeting is scheduled for February 16th at 9 a.m. Thank you so much, committee members. Vice Chair Spearman, I'm happy you were able to make it so we could see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
All right, you all too. Thank you.